you're adequately covered.
Okay. Why does Bunch need a TIF?
In order to make public improvements, and obviously in order to make those improvements so that people would want to locate there, the type of businesses that we would like to have in our community, and to make the project feasible for a developer to take on the type of risk that he is asserting that he's accepting.
Okay. What is his rate of return on this project with or without the TIF?
I'm not privy to that.
Okay. Let's see here. Would you look at the application there? Turn to the highlighted section at the back.
Which page?
The back page, last page, highlighted section. You see that?
Oh, where do you, oh,
The
you have a
application.
copy of it?
Yeah, you should have the application in there too.
I have my own.
Okay.
The last page?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Would you please read the two highlighted sections for us?
I'm not going to read for you, Paul.
Okay. It says in here specifically then that the project, including public improvements, would not result in a reasonable rate of return on the investment to the applicant without the use of tax incremental financing, and that the applicant would not undertake the project as described in this application unless tax incremental financing is available to finance eligible cost of public improvements. Would you agree with that's what it says?
It says what it says,
Okay.
Paul.
Now, I go back to the question. You don't know, it specifically mentions rate of return, so you don't know whether or not that they will get a sufficient rate of return or not on this project.
That is what has been asserted to us as an industrial development board.
Okay, so you're basing the financial feasibility strictly on this application.
And interviews with the particular developer.
But if you've never seen the finances or asked these questions, you surely can't tell us that you
We
know.
have asked the questions.
So,
He's indicated that it is not a reasonable rate of return.
and you're taking that as proof positive?
Just like we do whenever we locate manufacturers here, Paul.
This isn't a
Whenever
manufacturer.
they tell us, in order to compete with other communities, you must reduce the price of your land. You must provide educational funding dollars. Do we tell them, please let us see your rate of return on the pistons that you're making before we actually do that? You've been involved with those processes.
Honestly, I never have.
Oh, okay.
I've never been to that stage of one of the processes. It says in our policy and procedure manual, which is basically our roadmap, would you agree with these projects? It says the application review committee will not recommend that an economic impact plan be prepared unless the committee determines that the project described in the application will, and the first one is substantially benefit and enhance the economy of the city or county in which the project is located. And I agree with it, you've covered those bases. And that the project would not be acquired, constructed, or installed unless tax incremental financing was made available to finance a portion of the eligible costs. Once again, it says in our policy and procedure manual that we're supposed to verify. I mean, you own a finance company, and when someone comes in there, I don't believe that you would just say, sir, can you pay this back, can you not, without verifying anything. So it's in our policy and procedures, it's in our application, and the but-for clause is the linchpin of the TIF project. Now, I'm all for development. Obviously, that's my business. The TIF program's here, as you well know, because I was instrumental in bringing it here. But as Jack Fishman and I discussed at length when we brought this in, the problem was if we don't do it right, they will be abused. And, we are not answering this question. Now, Tony, have you seen anything that tells you that this project would not be done without the TIF?
The only evidence that we have in that regard is the affirmation from the applicant in the application itself that makes that assertion. And I believe that you can infer from the IDB's approval of the application that they believe that to be the case. But I have not seen anything independent that would allow me to evaluate that beyond that.
Okay. Let's see here. As you evaluate the process for cost to see if it, as you say, you all looked into if this was financially feasible, do you know what they sold the Food City on the East End for? And that is totally germane to this, because if you knew that, you would know what costs were. They sold that for $4.7 million, which means it probably didn't cost $4.7 million to build. But if you don't know that, it's hard for me to think that you know what the true cost of construction is to come to us and say, this project could not be built without the TIF. In the county commission meeting, in the packet, it claimed that the bunch are going to spend $21 million on this project. Is that correct?
Inclusive of the TIF funds, yes.
Yes. That includes the TIF fund, correct? Yet at county commission, Mike Bunch said he was only going to spend 10 or 12 million. Now, my question is, how much is Bunch going to spend? Is it 10 or 12 million like he said in front of county commission, or is it 21 million?
I think as you may recall, when you were there asking the questions, that was the initial phase of what he has in hand.
Okay, and what happens if he doesn't spend any more than the initial phase? What happens if he doesn't spend enough to qualify for the $2.5 million?
Well, let's say what happens, period. If he does not spend enough to attract enough development, who is responsible for paying that $2.5 million?
That's fine.
Well, no,
I don't see that.
no, stop.
Yeah.
Who is responsible for repaying the $2.5 million at the end of the day? Who has to pay for it?
The bunches do.
Okay?
So, but once again, I go back to this thing called a policy and procedures manual, which is supposed to be what the governing body, this body, kind of has allowed the industrial board to do. Now, it says very specifically in here that to get a TIF, you have to spend, you cannot give more than 20% of the cost that you're going to invest into the project. Is that correct?
It does.
Okay. So what happens if he doesn't spend enough to qualify for that number? I mean, how are we monitoring that? Or do I just have to come in and tell you that I'm going to spend $20 million and not spend it? Because you do know $10 or $12 million does not justify a $2.5 million TIF. You can do math, can't you?
Paul, is there any reason that you want to insult me?
Now, I would please ask the
Really?
councilmember to.
Is there really any reason you want to
Ask
insult
the
me?
rest of the councilmember.
I'm here representing something that helps you and your business along with mine. So why do you want to insult me?
I'm trying to protect the taxpayers, and you don't want to answer some of these questions. So how do we know this money will be spent?
We are monitoring that, as you've indicated and asked me about.
And what if they don't spend it?
First of all, 10 to 12 million. If you go 14 million, you got enough.
Yeah.
Okay? You go 13 million, you're 12.5 million, you're right on the cusp. So I think we feel pretty confident that certainly after the initial phase, that other things will come along that will push that number to a qualifying number with ease.
What if they don't?
I guess we would have to go back and request him repay part of the TIF.
Because Ingalls has been there almost 20 years now, and there's been nothing but the Ingalls development. Now, I know that one lot up front has sinkholes, but they've done nothing with inline space, and they've got plenty of out parcels lining Kidwell's Ridge that are not subject to sinkholes. So, I guess I'm asking, where in our policy and procedures does it say if they don't hit the threshold that they have to pay it back? Or they have to give money back, or what's the penalty?
I think that would be by statute, which I'm not familiar with, to be quite honest, whether or not we would go back and ask for a portion of that to be refunded.